happened. The last thing I remember was... Oh crap. I don't remember anything. Not even my name. Do I even remember how to breathe? Okay, I will deal with that later. But what am I supposed to do? If only there was some piece of paper lying around that for some reason completely details everything about my life and who I am. In case anyone ever becomes interested in being my friend, please. I'm gonna leave this piece of paper here lying on my desk that completely details everything about who I am and my life up to this point.
But why would someone who's not your friend be in your room?
I didn't think this through very well. So, I'm a 21-year-old guy who sits around all day playing visual novels and making videos with okay editing about them. Do I at least have any friends? No. But I do apparently have 2 anime body pills, so at least I have that going on for me. This bit, it was supposed to be funny, but now it's just making me kind of sad, so we're just gonna cut the camera. Just cut the camera! Just cut the...
Hello everyone, hopefully an OK Editor 357 here, and for today's video, I will be reviewing the 2 visual novels Famicom Detective Club The Missing Heir and The Girl Who Stands Behind for Nintendo Switch. For anyone who doesn't know, these 2 games were originally released in 1988 and 1989 for the Famicom Disk System, but the versions of them I am reviewing today are remakes of them developed by Mages and available on the Switch, these remakes being the first time the Famicom Detective Club titles are available outside of Japan. While the stories are the same, these recently released versions of them include updated artwork, new music, and voice acting, something that wasn't present at all in the original 2 releases. All this being said, I have only played Famicom Detective Club through these new versions of them, because I accidentally left my Famicom in the washer, so I will be reviewing them on their own. Basically, I won't be constantly comparing them to the originals is what I'm saying. And as usual, this is a spoiler-free review, so any footage that can be seen as spoilery in some way will be blurred or edited to avoid said spoilers. With all that being said, let's hop into the plot summary. Famicom Detective Club The Missing Heir, which is the title I personally recommend playing first, starts with our protagonist being woken up by a man named Amachi beside a cliff. Our nameable protagonist does not remember who he is or why he was on the side of the cliff to begin with, but thanks to his good friend Ayumi looking for him, he quickly discovers he is a detective who is looking into the mysterious death of the head of the wealthy Ayashiro family, and I am just going to apologize now for any names that I butcher in this video. Shortly after announcing her will, Kiku Ayashiro, the head of the family, died of supposed heart failure. But the family butler found that timing to be suspicious, which is why he hired our protagonist detective to look into the case. Now our protagonist must refamiliarize himself with the case up to this point, and try to get to the bottom of the mystery. Was it truly heart failure that killed the head of the Ayashiro family, or was it the malicious work of one of her many relatives or acquaintances? All the while also trying to regain his lost memories. Now for the plot of the second title in release order, but the first story chronologically, The Girl Who Stands Behind. Set 2 years before The Missing Heir, our protagonist runs into a detective named Utsugi, who recruits our main character into the detective agency he is working at by the time of The Missing Heir. The case this time for our main detective is looking into the mysterious death of a girl from a local high school whose body turned up near a close-by river. The victim, Yoko, was looking into an urban legend at her high school before her death, an urban legend of a mysterious and blood-soaked girl who haunts the school and appears standing behind students, aka the girl who stands behind.
They think that's bad? Try dealing with the case of the body pillow who stands behind. Wait. Where did she... Whoa.
Our main protagonist this time must familiarize himself with many of the school faculty, students, and more people as he tries to figure out if and how the girl who stands behind and Yoko's death are connected. Both of the stories in each of the Famicom Detective Club games are excellent bite-sized mysteries. They each do a great job at not overloading you with information, but also not having long periods of time where it feels like nothing has happened at all. The stories expertly introduce you to the overall mystery, have you meet a few select characters and locations, get to know said characters and acquaintances through dialogue and detective work, before moving on to the next major story events where you will meet more characters and visit new locations as the case gets more and more complex. They do this until the eventual final chapters of the stories where all the answers are revealed, answers which are certainly possible to reach yourself thanks to the many hints and foreshadowing spread throughout each of the game's stories. For The Girl Who Stands Behind, I was completely stumped. But that may just be because I'm a dummy. I never felt bored when I was reading and investigating. Each character has a unique relation to the case, save for people like random villagers you're asking for information from, that keep you guessing the entire time if they are hiding something from our main detective and how much they actually know about what is going on. I will say that the characters themselves in The Missing Heir, for the most part, don't really have much depth or overall character development. Now, they are still wonderfully written and interesting, but that said interest comes mostly from discovering more about them, their past, and their possible relation to the case you're investigating. Their dialogue and personalities are all well done, but there's no real change or growth to these characters, which makes sense considering the story is from a detective adventure visual novel from the late 80s. The character I found to be most interesting, surprisingly, was the protagonist. I think having him have amnesia and trying to regain his memories while also trying to solve the case regarding Kiku's death made for a very engaging time, and he actually does have some great character growth moments throughout the story. In stories like these, it's easy to make the protagonist as much of a blank slate as possible to have him or her be sort of an insert character, which I completely understand the reasoning behind, but I do prefer it when the main characters themselves are interesting characters in their own right. So props to The Missing Heir for that. Also, this is not important information whatsoever, but I think it's funny. While typing the script to the review, almost every time I keep putting what I named the protagonist as his name in the script, but I remember that name doesn't apply for everyone, so I keep having to go back and change it. So in short, like I said before, I'm a dummy. Another character I really like in The Missing Heir is Ayumi, but that's more just because I am a sucker for supportive friend characters. It makes me wonder what it's like to have supportive friends. Or friends at all. The characters in The Girl Who Stands Behind do actually have some great character development and depth to them. I think it's because the case overall, the death of Yoko, feels a lot more personal than the death of the head of the Ayashiro family. The entire high school community is shaken up by the death of Yoko. Her friends, the teachers, even students in the school who didn't know her personally are affected in some way, shape, or form. Whereas Kiku's death in The Missing Heir, it is clear that some people do miss her and mourn her passing, but a lot of the wealthy Ayashiro family were not personally close with Kiku, and finding out the true nature of her death is more to figure out how her will be affected, and who will stand to benefit from it. The students and faculty of Yoko's high school are deeply saddened at her passing, and finding the truth behind her death could act as some sort of closure to everyone. The protagonist himself does not have as much depth as he does in The Missing Heir, but he is still really charming and an endearing character to watch as he tries to solve his biggest case to date. So overall, the stories and how the mysteries are presented and eventually solved in both titles are really solid, but the characters in The Missing Heir do, for the most part, lack much depth and overall character growth. The characters in The Missing Heir are still interesting and serve their purpose in the story wonderfully, but The Girl Who Stands Behind definitely has more well-developed, engaging, and overall more memorable characters. I also personally believe the mystery in The Girl Who Stands Behind is harder to solve than The Missing Heir, but I think that sort of thing is going to be different for each person. Like I said before, both stories are great mysteries that have plenty of hints and foreshadowing, spread throughout the game to make the mystery 100% solvable before the end where the answers are all revealed. One last thing I will say about the stories in the Famicom Detective Club titles is that the atmospheres are brilliant thanks to the amazing sound effects and music. During The Missing Heir, you feel like a detective trying to solve an old school style case thanks to the setting and music throughout it. In The Girl Who Stands Behind, you again feel like a detective, but this time it feels like you're in a horror and murder mystery crossbreed of a story, thanks to music that can instill a sense of dread that makes even just the normal questioning of a high school teacher turn into a nerve-wracking experience. Or a sudden burst of thunder, which scares you as you try to figure out the truth behind the seemingly supernatural occurrence that is The Girl Who Stands Behind. And if you're wondering, who is this guy to say such bold things like The Girl Who Stands Behind can play like a horror story at times? Well, don't you worry, I'm qualified because my everyday life plays like a horror movie now. I keep getting attacked by my body pillow out of nowhere.
Alright, time to get recording. Not again!
The last chapter of The Girl Who Stands Behind especially had an amazing atmosphere that kept me on the edge of my seat. I wouldn't say The Girl Who Stands Behind ever crosses into genuine horror territory, but it definitely has its creepy moments which can be unnerving. All this to say, both Famicom Detective Club titles have wonderful atmospheres that really draw you into the settings of each game and make you feel like a part of their world.
Wow, I feel like death really surrounds me!
Moving on to the artwork. The artwork in both Famicom Detective titles are amazing. All the backgrounds and characters themselves are well drawn, and the character models are specifically impressive, as they are live 2D models that allow for subtle movement during the course of the story. This makes every character feel so much more alive. than the standard static character art for visual novels, not that I have ever had a problem with them. Giving each character subtle movements such as blinking, moving their arms slightly, or just shifting their body slightly from left to right makes every conversation with characters that much more engaging and lifelike. Add to that a great variety of facial expressions for different emotions and more exaggerated movements for big story moments and revelations, and you have yourself some of the most eye-catching visuals in any visual novel I've played. It reminds me of the artwork in ReZero, The Prophecy of the Throne, which also used subtle animations for all the character sprites to make everything pop more. It gets me wondering how some of my favorite visual novels would look like with slightly animated character sprites. Not that I have any problem with the usual still character images, but thinking about how Higurashi or Umineko when they cry could look with that style of character sprites is a fun thought. The backgrounds are also animated, though it's not as noticeable, but I was impressed by the amount of detail and various things there are to click on and observe in the background. The art for both Famicom Detective Club titles are consistently good, and bring these wonderful mystery stories to life excellently. The soundtrack is great as well, with a great variety of tracks that fit the changing moods and atmospheres throughout the course of the story. You also have the option to switch between the remastered soundtrack and the original, which is a really nice touch. I stuck to the remastered tracks for my playthrough. I think it would have been a cool bonus if you could also switch to the visuals of the original release as well, but it's definitely much more of a hassle to include the original visuals for the entire game as opposed to the original soundtrack. Like I mentioned before while talking about the story, the sound design in both Famicom Detective Club titles is amazing. Whether you're on the top of a cliff with crashing waves in the background, or inside a high school that becomes creepy as all hell during a thunderstorm, or inside the only doctor's office at a village, there is no shortage of subtle noises going on in the background to really immerse you in the world of Famicom Detective Club. The crashing waves or sound of wind at the top of a cliff, the creepy and echoing noise of rain hitting the rooftops of a large school, the outside noises coming from people walking by the doctor's office or people checking in. Every location you visit in both of the stories have numerous background noises and effects going on that really adds to the, and I know I've said this word 1,000 times already, but atmosphere of Famicom Detective Club. I've said before in another review that I think sound design is an often overlooked aspect of a visual novel, but great sound design can really do wonders for immersing you in the worlds of said visual novels, and I think Famicom Detective Club hit it out of the park. Also, whenever a major clue is discovered, there's this one sound effect that plays in both of the Famicom Detective Club titles, and it's always so satisfying when you uncover something huge for the story, and you just wait for the sound effect to come on and it does. When I describe it, it probably sounds silly or like nothing special, but it's the little things like the consistency of that sound effect that really matter in life.
Yeah, who even needs a good story in visual novels when you have noises?
A couple other brief things I'd like to talk about before wrapping things up. Throughout the Famicom Detective Club titles, you have a notebook feature, which is a straightforward collection of all the characters you meet in the story and all the information you have gathered on them, and it updates every time you learn something new. This feature is a lifesaver when you're like me and maybe had to take 3 or 4 days off from playing and had to jump back in but couldn't remember everything right away.
Seriously, haven't you ever picked up your Switch, start playing a game, and then just go, who am I? Oh, no, wait. Who am I? No, seriously, I forgot. Oh, no. Oh. Can I go back to not remembering anything? Please?
The notebook feature is super helpful and easy to navigate, so I definitely just wanted to mention that. The only nitpick I have about the two Famicom Detective Club titles is how particular they can be on doing certain things in certain orders to progress the story. To put it blatantly, it could be annoying at times when you thought you've asked everything you could ask, or look at everything there is, but it turns out you can't move on yet because you actually have to ask something 2 or 3 different times, but not until you looked at this thing, or thought about it for a few moments. Okay, let me correct myself, it was very annoying. Nothing that a guide couldn't fix though. If you do find yourself stuck and repeating the same questions and getting the same answers again and again from whoever the protagonist is interrogating, sometimes they do leave clues on what you should say or do next in the form of thoughts the protagonist has to himself. But sometimes it's just up to you to figure it out. I understand that this is very likely a product of Famicom Detective Club's time. I think this sort of thing is expected from these types of games from the late 80s, but I still wish there could have been some way to make the process a little smoother, or include some sort of system where after being stuck so long in the same scene, the game offers to tell you exactly what to do next. Kinda like how I need someone to tell me what to do next for every aspect of my life.
Okay, put the spoon in the bowl. Lift the spoon. Put the cereal-filled spoon in your mouth. Start chewing. Take the spoon out. Now contemplate your existence. Continue your review.
Aside from the sometimes too specific order needed to do things in order to advance the stories, I have no complaints about the overall story and investigative process of both Famicom Detective Club titles. Both relatively short mysteries go through their engaging and complex stories with great character writing, mostly fun detective work, and ample hints and foreshadowing that lead into the amazing finales for each of the stories. So in the end, with the Famicom Detective Club titles, you have two relatively short but amazingly well-written mysteries with great eye-catching artwork, a good variety of remastered tracks and access to the original soundtrack, excellent sound design and voice acting, and the chance to experience visual novel history. I rate Famicom Detective Club a 9.5 out of 10. You can get both Famicom Detective Club titles on the Nintendo Switch eShop. I think it's really cool that Nintendo decided to give these games another shot in the spotlight, as they could very well be one of the first visual novels to grace a home console, along with the fact that they are just great and well done mysteries that also serve as great entry points to the visual novel genre. I would actually love to see some form of continuation of the Famicom Detective Club stories. I've gotten attached to our protagonist Ayumi and Utsugi, and I would love to see them tackle another mysterious case in the future. Maybe if these two re-releases of the Famicom Detective Club titles did well enough, we could see some sort of continuation in the future. Now onto the Who is Best Girl segment, and the Best Girl Famicom Detective Club is... the nurse at Kumada's clinic, for having to deal with Kumada's antics so often. Because if she didn't, who else would work at the village's only clinic? Clearly, she's the true hero of the story. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed this review. For anyone who has played the Famicom Detective Club games, what did you think of them? Do you agree with my score? And tell me in the comments which of the two stories is your favorite. As for anyone who has never heard of these visual novels before or was maybe thinking about getting them, I hope I did an adequate job of reviewing them, and maybe even convincing you to buy them. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and until the next video, see you guys.
End your video with a witty bit.
Well, everyone, that's it for this video. Wait. Hold on. What are you doing here? Hang on, it was you!
But why would someone who's not your friend be in your room?
I didn't think this through very well. Wait, what are you doing in my room? You were the reason I forgot everything at the start of this video. When you threw my Sumi body pillow at me, I fell down and hit my head. And you're the one who's been throwing it at me and manipulating me this entire time. You... totally normal looking person. Huh.
But didn't you say in the beginning that you forgetting everything was just a bit?
Yeah, and isn't bit athlete lingo for amnesia?
Okay, one, you're not an athlete. And two, why would you use the word bit to substitute for amnesia instead of just saying amnesia?
Less letters.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But anyways, I want payback for all the times you hit me with my Sumi body pillow. Which, granted, was only like 3 times, but that's still 1.5 more times than I wanted to be hit with a body pillow in my life. And unlucky for you, mister, it's always been my dream to murder someone.
Even though it's illegal to murder people?
Crap! How do I keep forgetting that? Have you been telling me to forget that? Because you know I follow your instructions, and that's just rude.
Forget your dream of murdering someone.
Why would you... I'm dreamless.
Relax, man. It's not like I told you to forget how to breathe. I'm gonna go before I do any more damage.
Wait. What are you tell me? But that's still 1.5 more times than I wanted to be hit with a body pillow in my life. And unlucky for you. Alright.
Damn it, prop department.